Welcome to The Path to Healing with me, Hazel Grogan. And in this episode, we're going to look at the emotional level of the body, which is very important. So I decided to use my very own teacher, who in 2019, I brought over from the UK to Ireland to teach me and a couple of my students how to use this very powerful technique. Her name is Tania A Prince, and she is a leading internationally recognized expert in emotional freedom technique, or EFT. She is one of the 29 founding members who was originally trained by the founder, Gary Craig. She has over 20 years experience and she is a wealth of knowledge. Welcome, Tania. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself properly because I know you've got lots of other things that you do. So you're an EFT founding master. So you're one of the only 20, is it 20 that was?
There's 29 founding masters. What founding masters are is the developer of EFT is a man called Gary Craig. And in the early days of EFT, you know, a lot of people were using it, but not very efficiently or effectively. And he wanted to identify people who were experts using EFT. So he set up a master's program. And if you look online now, you'll see a lot of people who call themselves masters. It's a very different thing that they're doing than what we did, you know. The master's program was more of a program that tested your abilities in EFT. So it wasn't so much teaching you EFT, it was testing you that you were an expert in the field, which meant, you know, you had to do demonstrations to prove that. You had to do a massive test to prove that. And you had to have extensive experience. And I can't remember how many people at that point, because I think it was about 2005. I don't know, can't remember exactly how many people you already have to have worked with to even go on that program to be tested, whether it was 500 or 1,000 people. But even at that point in time, I'd already worked with 1,000 people using EFT. Right. So you had to have.
It was more challenging for you. So it was like literally being thrown into the tiger's den.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love, you know, anything worth having, you know, should be a bit challenging. It shouldn't be easy to do. And I did find it a little bit challenging, which is great. So I become an EFT founding master. There are 29 in the world, you know. So I'm also what you call an accredited EFT master trainer of trainers, which means that I train not only the therapists, I train trainers in EFT, so they train other people. And I'm the developer of my own approach, which is called mindfulness-based inner repatterning, which I've just at the weekend spoken at the NLP conference on that. The NLP conference I spoke at was originally the Indian NLP conference, but now it is a world event because they brought it online, and it was a brilliant event. And I introduced them to my approach, and we had some fabulous results. I've had some of them sending me back about what I mean. They were shocked. They were shocked at how fast it worked for them, and because they didn't, you know, it just seemed so simple. And yet these results happen. So they were like in disbelief, you know. So I developed that particular approach, and I'm also an NLP trainer as well. So
you also did hypnotherapy as well. Is that right? You did hypnotherapy at the start with NLP, and NLP is neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, is what I did with you. So that's how you're my teacher. And for people out there who know me as a Reiki practitioner, I do all forms of healing, all different modalities. I do past life regression therapy, angel therapy, mediumship. But when I started, in 2015, when I started channeling light language and my hands started to take off when I was working over my clients on the bed, my hands would tap people, constantly tapping them on the head or tapping them on the body in places. And I didn't know. I work with my intuition. So I was working on trust and knowing that my guides were going to do whatever it was for the client that was coming to me. And I wanted to then understand in a logical sense what was actually happening there. So a friend of mine, which was another student of my Auntie Ethel, who taught me how to do Reiki, his name is Ash. He highly recommended you. He said, if anybody knows how to do emotional freedom technique, he said, it's my teacher, Tania A Prince, he said, ask her. So I had spoken to a few of my clients who are some of my Reiki students, as well as even some of the level 1s and 2s, and they were really interested in wanting to do the emotional freedom technique with you. So we got a few of us together and we brought you over to Ireland in 2019. Is that right? Feels like it's only last year. 2019.
I think it was 2000.
Yeah, it was October 2019.
Yeah.
So that's where we've met each other. And for people out there who don't know what emotional freedom technique is, can you explain that to them?
Emotional freedom technique is an energy psychology approach to healing. And if you're looking at energy, so an energy therapy approach, it kind of gets results by type of influence in the energy levels of the body, the kind of emotional levels of the body. And it's a very, very powerful approach, because I think two things basically happen when you use approach such as EFT, is that you bring the body back to balance energetically, so energy begins to flow.
Yeah.
All right. So you can remove the blockages to the free flow of energy. And so when you're looking at energy techniques, they affect the information level of the body, because the body is continually repairing and regenerating itself. And for the body to repair and regenerate itself, it needs to be using information, because, how does it know to build a little finger here?
Yeah.
It needs to be tuning into wherever that information is that lets it know how to put each cell down. So we're working at that level, the really powerful informational level, and in a good way. So it's a very, very powerful way of working, because that's at the root, the base of all issues.
Yeah.
Disturbances in the body's energy system. So we're working
where it started. And with emotional freedom technique, I love the way it actually works on the meridian line. So like when I'm doing Reiki, I'm physically working over the chakra system, so you're working on the main chakras. But with the emotional freedom technique, when you're using the tapping points, you're tapping with the tips of your fingers, and you're tapping on the acupoints or the acupressure points, which it's like using acupuncture without the needles, which people go, oh yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
It's like, because for me, I don't really like needles in that way. Like, I wouldn't be a person to be running out to get needles. But if you say to me, oh, well, go and tap on the same place, I'm going to do it without the needles. Obviously, that would be my first choice. And you find that it is, especially now as we're going through this experience that we are in at the moment, because we're all at home, we're all online. Do you find that it's it was very easy for you to be able to adapt to it, because it was done online, that you don't physically need to have the physical person there as your client?
It's been done online for years.
Yeah.
And I what I did is, when all of this happened, I took a couple of months off, then brought all of my trainings online. It wasn't an issue for me, because I think I must have been probably one of the first people in the UK when the internet was coming off. I went and did a online training course with one of the Manchester universities anyway. So to teach me how to do that. But I've worked online for years because I have an international client base. And so I've done therapy with people from various places around the world for years anyway. And so it was, I find it actually, it's a good experience, because I think this is allowing us to reach out to all those other places that previously we couldn't, because the location would have limited us. So or something like EFT, I think what's happening now, that people who had barriers to going online are pushing through those barriers, because they want connection, they want to do things in their lives. So that's, to me, as much as I love freedom, because I do love freedom, I love going and doing live training courses, as you know.
Because originally when you came over to Ireland first, you were telling me, and I hope that you'll tell this story. Originally when you came here, it's like, oh yeah, I've been here before, you said, or you're in Malahide. We did it in Malahide. We went to a place down in the marina there, Malahide and Essentials, and we rented out a room, and we did it over. I did your EFT, I always get it wrong, EFT practitioner level did I do? So I did the 2 days, and I did the online course. So you do 3 days altogether, the online first, and then you do 2 days. Well, we did it in person.
Yeah, well, we did 3 days, I think, over at Malahide.
Yeah. And then you said to me, oh, I've been here before. So will you go back and tell people the reason that you were in Ireland before? Because you had a very colourful life leading up to, before you, I suppose in a way, very similar to me, because I was reading your bio last night, and I actually, oh my God, I never knew that you had studied also in chemistry, that you had a degree in chemistry, went to do biology as well, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And then you decided that you hated it, and you said, I actually want to be a singer. So how did that happen?
Well, I think, actually, I've always had an interest in self-help techniques. So there is that. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. And so I always had that because I was very shy as a child. So I think that acted as a motivation for me.
yeah,
But shy, but not shy. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I actually did things like youth theatre. I mean, my first role, I think, was as a dead body. Hazel.
Well, you didn't have to do much, Tanya. You just had to lie there playing dead.
Ah, yes, but there is a way to get yourself opted in the casting. And I didn't like being the dead body, so I thought I'm not going to be the dead body. So I disappeared. The dead
Yeah.
body disappeared. So I got an upgrade to the chorus line. So yeah, I always had an interest in that kind of thing. So I went and I did all the sciences. I studied all the sciences, physics, chemistry, biology. And at one time, I was really thinking about doing a mathematics course at university. So that was in the days when I was good at that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did all this science and stuff like this. Came out of university, worked as a microbiologist for a year in the laboratory. So, these little white outfits people wear nowadays. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Been there,
Well,
done that.
I didn't go and do the degree in it, but I did an applied lab science afterwards.
Yeah.
It was biology and chemistry, and I went to work in the state labs, working with foods and pesticides, and it was so funny because I had this guy who was deaf. He was deaf, but he could lip read, and I was talking to him all day long, and I didn't realize he actually couldn't even hear me because I wasn't standing in front of him. It was like, thank God. But and again, I went from there, and I said, when I was 17, I went down down the road of doing my showbiz life, and I had, again, like you, 10 years where what band were you in? What was it? Would people remember the band?
Well, I'm not going to say that because
Okay.
life has moved on. But what I would say is, when I came out of that job that I was working at, I literally just walked out one day. I didn't want to go back, so I think I cut every, I don't know what.
Tie off, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did that, and I went straight into show business. And I think I'm not sure the first place was it Ireland that I came to first.
Yeah.
I definitely was very early on, so and came over to Ireland, and I've toured right through Europe as well, but over to Ireland, I've toured Ireland many a time. We created our own dance act, and I'm not a professional dancer. I wasn't trained. Well, no, I wouldn't say I was a professional dancer, but I wasn't trained dancer. Yeah. So we created our own act, and it was very much like something like out of Mad Max, the movie, and very creative. So we were like one of the top speciality acts, and we did a lot of nightclubs and TV shows and stuff like that. Very acrobatic. We could literally fling one member of the group across the stage, and they'd land, and and there would be flick flacks, there would be these block splits things, and
and it obviously came with music. Did somebody sing?
Well, then we did that for a while, and then we thought, well, we've been there, done this. Where do we go from here? All right, we form our own rock band now.
Right.
And we did things like we auditioned the guys with the guitars.
Amazing.
And no, and we were on stage doing support for different things, and we did have Stings. Yeah, that's the police, isn't it? Stings management company after us. So I think it was at that point I decided to leave because I didn't want to commit more of my time to that, because it's quite a you see the bits where you're on stage, but the other bits are quite hard, aren't they? The touring constantly.
Well, especially when you're touring, or it's like I was in mine. I was working as well because we didn't have money until we got the contract. So I was trying to keep a job going as well as doing the career. But do you find now when you look back that it gave you lots of people experience, that would give you more, especially in the job that you have now, that you're really able to step up in front of thousands of people and have no problem standing? Like, I have no problem standing up in front of 100,000 people and singing, but for me to get up and talk in front of 100,000 people might be something totally different. You find it gave you different life experiences?
That's an interesting point, because even though I could do all these quite of extreme things, show business wise, that didn't involve talking so much. I mean, I could talk on stage in the band, by the way. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But actually talking as yourself, is a very different thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'd always had an issue with that, a shyness about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I would say is a shyness, I was triggered by that situation because
Yeah.
it is a trigger. Yeah. You've experienced something in your life that's caused you to go into a survival response. So that was happening. Yeah. And so when I came out and I decided to go into therapy and become a therapist, and bear in mind that what I didn't know at that point when I made that decision is that my father had been a hypnotherapist in the 50s. And prior to going to university, I'd actually hypnotized my first person. Yeah.
Right.
So I was already interested in that. So I had to actually get rid of the nervousness about being and speaking as myself. And once, and that happened with all these techniques I was doing. But once I did that, what I think is, I love being in the public eye.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I know from a teacher point of view, you were absolutely brilliant teacher to us. For the few days that we had you here, because when you and I maybe it's because we resonate with you. Like, I just love people who are bubbly and have lots of stories to tell, because I'm that type of a learner. I learn from the stories that you tell. So I'm learning it in the way that the story that you're telling me, I'm picking it up, because I'll never forget that story you told, and I'll work it into understanding how you healed yourself. So you're saying about being shy, and you were saying, your triggers being that little child in school when the teacher says you stand up there and read that book, and that you go, oh my God, you nearly get sick with the terror of standing in front of your class. And that's a trigger that will cause you maybe down the road not to be able to stand up in front of a couple of 100,000 people and be able to publicly speak.
Yeah, absolutely. What people don't realize, because they always, they relate the things, oh, that person's shy. No, that person might be this really kind of person who loves being in the public eye, but they get triggered and can't. Yeah. And they also sometimes say, because it sometimes can look like you're not capable if you get triggered in a certain environment.
Yeah.
And you're in survival response, and all your capabilities go out the window. You can't think.
Yeah.
Which can happen in many scenarios.
Yeah.
You can be a businesswoman, business guy, and you go into the business situation and maybe even a small group, and you get triggered, and suddenly you're like,
yeah, because that used to happen with me all the time. Like, I used to have to write the words of my own song that I wrote on my hand, and the guy who was the rapper in the band used to rap my lines for me when I'd forget. And I'm like, how can you forget the words of your own song? But something might happen, and you go, and then it goes in your brain that, oh my God, I forgot it last night. And then the next night, oh my God, I'm going to forget it again. And then all of a sudden the words are gone, even though it's sung hundreds of times.
What you can look at there, you see, you got the fight or flight response, and you got the freeze response. And I think in the freeze response, we go into a shutdown mode. Freeze response is where we've had some experience in life where our system, our mind-body system, has kind of identified or thought we are in mortal danger. Now, this can happen to children a lot of times, and it can be simple things like, a parent giving a scornful look, a parent giving, disappointed look in a child. If you get a lot of repetitive stuff like that, it is rejection, and that can lead to certain emotional reactions for a child. Why I say as a child, because a lot of things start early in life.
Exactly.
And equally, if you've experienced violence as well, or even witnessed violence or whatever, there's a lot of emotional events that can cause that kind of freeze kind of response. And what that does is put you into shutdown mode. And in shutdown mode, the brain can turn off.
Because and it's funny, because you can go one way or you can go the other, because you can have somebody who goes into freeze mode, or you can have somebody who might get a fright because then they remember as a trigger of something happening to them when they were younger, and then they go like a lunatic around the house like a Tasmanian devil. And send them two different ways. So you did the NLP first, so you studied that first, and you did hypnotherapy, and obviously you were searching for more. So what led you on to Gary Craig? And I know that Gary Craig, was he the original founder of Emotional Freedom Technique? Was there another guy first? Was there another guy
he
first?
is.
He's the original founder.
He is the original founder. What you have is there was a technique called thought field therapy, which is a precursor technique. It's its own unique technique, thought field therapy. And I think it's Dr. Roger Callahan developed that.
That's right, yeah.
And but it was a more complex technique at that point in time. And, because it had specific patterns of tapping to deal with specific issues. So there's a lot of information there, Gary Craig actually attended his training courses, and he had a very, very simple idea, which was we only have so many meridians in the body. If we were to tap on them all, we develop a universal approach, a
Yeah.
universal one technique fits all problems
Yeah.
approach to working with this. So it took out the need to learn all these different algorithms, all these different tapping sequences, and became just one simple approach that's used for all problems. So that's
Yeah.
where Gary's big innovation was. So
Yeah. And that's the shortened protocol. So that's the one that you've taught us. So the shortened protocol is the eight tapping points, the karate chop, and then the ones on the body. So explain those. So why do we tap on those 8 points? And I mean, I know it's not that you use it all the time, but I really like to use the top of the head. Well, that's one of my favorite ones, because I think that a lot of people that come to me always seem to have lots of emotional stuff and lots of mental stuff going on in the head. And I think that the tapping, for me, I love it. And I think I always use that in mind. So the tapping points be the karate chop point, which is I've done a few of those posts on Insta. People who've been watching thought they were very effective. They're even just doing the karate chop point. You didn't even have to go to the rest of the body. The top of the head, the corner of the eyebrow, the other side of the eyebrow, under the eye, under the nose, the chin, the chest. And I find that's one of the most important parts also. And then underneath the arm.
yeah.
So the reason being, you're saying that he shortened it down to those points, because if you use every one of those points in the sequence of the shortened one, you're not going to miss any acupuncture point.
Well, what I would say is the original version of EFT had a lot more points on it. So what you were doing is originally you didn't tap on the karate point. Originally, you would go about 3 inches down from here, 3 inches across on the chest, and you would rub this area called the sore spot, and you would do the setup on that particular point. Yeah,
right.
But then it changed to the side of the hand. So there were changes that occurred over time. And the original version of EFT, we would do the tapping on the side of the hand. This, not the original, the second kind of variation came where we tapped on the side of the hand. We tapped from the eyebrow, side of eye, under nose, chin point, on the collarbone point, under the arm, the side of the thumb, first finger, second finger, fourth finger, and side of the hand.
Yeah.
And they'd do that. They'd also do a little bit called the 9 gamut, where they would tap on this particular point and get eye movements and do things like that. Yeah. So that was the original version. And then, what they found is they shortened it. And that comes to the approach that I taught you, because they took out, you can still put the 9 gamuts in if you're not getting results. The bit tap in here, you can still put it in if you're not getting results, to see if it kickstarts things. However, they shortened it to a shortened version of EFT, and we're getting the same really good results, because one of the main things about EFT working is tuning into a problem. You have to tune into the problem, tap and rebalance the system. So, and the thing is, a lot of the meridians, there is some type of connectedness. So even though we're tapping on less meridians, we're tapping on the points where the meridians come near the surface, we're tapping on less meridians, we're still influencing the whole system. And so it's very, very, very powerful.
Because I remember you saying about, say for instance, under the eye point, say it's the stomach point, isn't it? You're saying if anybody has any problems with the stomach, but say for instance, somebody has, butterflies in their tummy all the time, or they have this energy in their tummy all the time, people who hold a lot of their emotions in their tummy, and they get anxious, but they're anxious because they're thinking about a job, or thinking about a new interview that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. That's in their head. So when you tap on the tummy point, you're missing the head point, where maybe that's where the disruption of the energy is starting in the first place. So it's
so if we have a thought, that it's creating some kind of physical symptom we're experiencing. So where would I go with that? But I like to work on origins myself. So but origins of where that came from, I do like to find out where's the first time in your life you ever experienced that, and I like to kind of tune them into the original event and then tap that out. I like that way of working. But equally, you can tap on, so even though I've got this butterfly feeling on my stomach, because there's so many ways to tune into a problem. Other times people will actually tune into the thought the person has. yeah, I'm just thinking of that going into this new job, and I'm thinking the manager's going to shout at me
Yeah.
because maybe with that scenario I just painted there, maybe that person, the manager, relates or kind of connects to some prior experience they've had
Maybe
with the
with a
boss.
parent or somebody who is shouting at them. Yeah.
I thought, yeah,
Yeah.
because we tend to run patterns in life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this experience young in life. So maybe with authority figures. Yeah. And then we go through life, and next time we meet an authority figure with something similar to what we experience and we have the big emotion about
Yeah.
in the first place, maybe they got a look in their eye. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Suddenly
trigger
we
comes
see
up.
that look in their eye, and automatically we get triggered.
Yeah.
So that's why there are a lot of people out there with issues such as authority figure problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course there was.
and it's often related to the original authority figures in your life, which could be the parents, grandparents, teachers,
Teachers.
etc.
Yeah.
And some experience you've had that then, because you've had that experience, because we have a survival mechanism within ourselves, we keep getting triggered
Yeah.
by situations, and we tune back into the original energy of what it was that happened to us.
Originally,
It's
yeah.
not processed out.
I find that it's a really good technique for somebody, especially for me as a practitioner of Reiki. I always try to give my client as many tools as they can so they can heal themselves. It's not that I don't want to see my client come back, because obviously we need our clients to keep us going, right? But I want to be able to give them some information each time that they come, to be able to, when they go home and they are triggered by some experience or something that's happening to them, that they're able to, at that moment, go to their spiritual toolbox and say, okay, Hazel told me to tump my thymus tump, or Hazel told me to get out and ground my energy, or there's different tools that I like to give them. I think with Emotional Freedom Technique, it's such a powerful tool that you can do yourself at home. And if you know the sequence, and if you know the setup sequence and how the phrasing goes, and it's so simple to do that you can do it anywhere. You can do it in your car when you're driving, sitting at the traffic lights. You can sit in the loo and do it. It's something that is such a quick, a quick fix.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, I will share a story, because you just reminded me of one of my trainees. Because people don't always get the scope of an approach of what it can do. And why I share this story is because one of my trainees years ago, and she originally came and she'd had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. Yeah. She'd had a diagnosis of, I think, cervical spondylitis in her neck, so kind of an arthritis in her neck. She had extreme anxiety, and I'm not sure if she had another diagnosis as well, but that's
they're like really chronic issues.
Yeah, chronic. And when she came into the training, she was a young woman. She still is a young woman, and very glamorous, glamorous young woman. However, there was a lot of rigidity in movement because she had this problem with her neck. She had the fibromyalgia going on, and so when she moved, it was like this because she couldn't do anything other than that. Could barely move her arm from away from the side because it was almost like it was locked. So, a lot of stuff.
Everything was rigid.
Yeah. And so a lot of the problems were showing themselves physically in her body, and it was getting worse and worse. She'd been to a doctor, and they had said to her, there is no cure, you just have to accept this. She couldn't accept it. She was determined to get rid of it. And she just so happened, this is her luck really, I'd say, she came across an EFT therapist who did a session with her. Now, she'd sought a lot of other techniques out, and nothing had helped her prior to this. But she went to this EFT therapist, and she noticed a slight improvement in their problem. That was enough to make her sign on to my training course. And she came onto the training course, and she was, that girl volunteering for everything. I'll be your demo. I'll be the demo. And she volunteered. She volunteered for the section where I was doing an approach in EFT called Chase the Pain. Don't have to have pain to use Chase the Pain. It's just the name for it. So physical problems, limitation of movement, great for stuff like that. Can even work with emotional stuff like that.
That's such an effective one. I think that's the main one that I find, that is people go, oh my God, it's gone. The minute they just do like one round of tap, and they're like, Oh my God, especially like anything to do with back pain or something that's really like something for them that's chronic, that they feel it all the time. And they only have one round of it and they go, oh my God, I can't believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll explain why in a minute. But what I would say is that this particular lady came and she volunteered for that. So we kind of set up the feedback system to see how far she could move her arm from the side. And we did the demo and we were able to get it an improvement, a percentage improvement. Yeah. All right. But you see, she's got these big things going on. And so we got percentage improvement on that. Well, that's where she goes home and she is tapping like you wouldn't believe. She's got the biggest tapping structure going on. She's tapping and clearing out any negative memory. And I say negative memory is any memory, any event in your life that happened that at the time it was not nice. Yeah. Even if you don't feel anything about it now, she's tapping out her databases of bad past experiences, because them things stick with us. They're like the baggage we carry through life, and she's tapping these type of things out energetically so she becomes free of them, because what you're looking at, the event's already happened. She survived it. But what happens is we're still tuning into it, and it's being used by our systems to run our life now. So it becomes part of the information controlling us. So she's tapping them out, which means she becomes more present in the now, by the way, more aware and present. And she's doing that. If you saw, I mean, nowadays, where is she now? So she tapped. And by the way, she also come on my mindfulness-based inner repatterning. And it was on that training course that we literally found out. I knew always that she'd been a war baby in Iran. I knew this. She knew this. But originally, when she first came, she said, I don't remember much from
this life or from a previous life?
This life. She was a child. She was a child in Iran, and her family had then come over to the UK, I think fairly early on. But so she'd been born in a time period when this war was going on.
And so much shock to the system, you know, that constant terror all the time, or in that state.
Yeah, and she didn't have a lot of memories of that, you know, but so that can be sometimes because it's buried from us, because our systems look to protect us. So it was in the mindfulness-based inner repatterning course that literally it becomes stunningly obvious that she had some very big baggage from that was raw as the day it had happened. And you know, the mindfulness-based inner repatterning is absolutely brilliant for finding the stuff. And also dealing with it, by the way.
Because it's so powerful, the words, you know, like, you know, I try to explain to people that the cells are listening to every single thing that's happening, and the cells, you know, we can imagine our body especially being full of being 70% water, like this, it's the consciousness within us, and it's words that are actually affecting our body. And you know, you can say when you go back to experience in your life that you don't remember, but your mind and has this little box in there that has all of the memories, and sometimes we close the boxes on things that actually were very difficult for us when we were, or people times that we don't even remember that happened to us as we were babies, and we have it in there, and once the box opens and you get to that point where you understand that's why.
Absolutely. Well, every cell in your body knows everything that's ever happened to you. Every cell, it's tuning into that information.
From this life and other lifetimes.
Oh, yeah. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because it is about survival. It'd be very silly if we don't learn the lessons from past generations, really. And have the access to some of that data to survive in this life, you know. I would say that so she cleared a lot of that, and what I would say is right now is this lady is an EFT trainer, because she's very motivated. She has very beautifully started, she's running training courses for Iranian students in her native language, because she knows a lot of those people also were born into war situations and all of that. And she's very passionate. And if she walked in here now, Hazel, she walked into your room, you'd look at her and not think anything of that. You would not you'd struggle to see that she'd had those problems from years ago. You would struggle to see it. There's a little bit of something still to do, but massive improvement.
But as well, you said that when she's so glamorous, she comes in, sometimes people that are glamorous put on this face because it's a mask, and it's like, oh, don't see what's underneath, you know?
I don't think That the glamour is, I think it's a part of the Iranian culture.
Yeah. Yeah. They're always so glamorous.
They love that kind of look. It's
Yeah.
very stylish. It's
And
very
you said that when she wasn't able to lift her arm up, because I know you told us other stories that there was another few people that you said that was the saying that when
Oh
you
yeah,
get
yeah,
this,
yeah.
because when you're doing the emotional freedom technique, you use the system of the feedback mechanism where
Yeah.
it'll start you ask them what's the intensity of that. So you get the person to describe the pain that they're having. So if they say, oh, there's a real dull pain in my shoulder, it's best for them to describe it in their language. Isn't that what you
Yeah,
said? It's much
absolutely.
better for them to say, oh, it's a dull, sharp pain in my left shoulder. And when they use those words, they're the words that you use in the phrase when you're doing the sequence with them.
Yeah, because your EFT works by tuning in
In.
to a problem,
Yeah.
tapping and rebalancing the energy. Yeah. So if they got a dull ache feeling here, your mind knows what you're tuning into. Yeah.
Mm.
So if you say, I have this dull ache feeling inside my left shoulder on the inside, yeah, that's kind of directing your mind. That's the problem. And your whole systems rebalance themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you tap and tune in, and your body sorts itself out, brings
Yeah.
itself back to balance. That's
and
a very
and because
simple.
you're using also the sequence being that you start off with the intensity level of how intense is it from between 0 and 10, and they say, oh, at the moment it's 10, it's top of the scale. Then you know after a few rounds of tapping if you can bring that intensity down from 10 to 0. And I find, especially with Chase the Pain, when you're doing the Chase the Pain, I think within the first round of tapping they go from 10 to 5. That's a massive jump, and then it takes a little bit longer then to get them down.
Well, different
By the
people,
time it gets
different
to
things. Yeah.
different folks for different strokes, or different strokes for different folks. But that's one of my favorites. I love that one because I think something when it's a physical problem and they see, okay, that has really helped me, then they have this knowledge that it works, and they'll say, oh, you know what, yeah, let's go even deeper now. And you can bring them to the next level of, which is other techniques that we use. So the other techniques that, say, for instance, I love using would be tell the story, tearless trauma, the movie technique. I love the movie technique. But it's funny, like out of all of us who trained with you, there's a certain few that only use one technique only and say, no, this is my favorite one. So this, of all the techniques, what would your favorite technique of them be?
Oh, favorite. I don't know if I have a favorite because you see, with myself, because I'm training people all the time in
Time,
these,
yeah.
I like to go from technique to technique, whichever's appropriate for the person that I'm working with. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm always doing that because yeah, so whatever's appropriate for that person. But I also like to make sure that I am using all the approaches as well, because you need to keep, for me, it's about keeping my skills where they need to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, it's always what's appropriate for that person, what's going to get them that result that they want in the fastest time possible, in the most gentle way,
Yeah.
that's going to create deep transformational change for them.
Yeah.
Some results are going to stay over time. What I perhaps would add as well to what we've just said right now, when you're working with Chase the Pain, if you don't get a result with that, yeah, so we're working through the body. If we don't get a result for that, we look for emotional reasons for, yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean if you don't get a result with that we won't get a result. What it means is we change our tactics.
And how would you change your tactics? So say, for instance, it's not a physical pain, it's more of an emotional pain. So say, for instance, okay, so with this elbow pain or this shoulder pain is because they have the weight of the world on their shoulders and they're being pushed down in work or being, downtrodden in their home by their partner. What would the next technique that you would use if the Chase the Pain doesn't work and it doesn't bring their intensity level from 10 down to 2 is what we want?
Well, I could say, for various things, if I have an example of that, for one thing, a question to ask is, if there was an emotional reason for this not healing, what might that be?
Yeah.
And people often say, a word will come to mind, if I let go of this, people will have expectations of me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the real issue, isn't it? So the problem is serving a purpose for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the real problem is the issue about people having expectations of them. And that's an emotional issue. And you can clear that equally, that emotional issue of people having, because we don't need to feel we need to fulfill other people's expectations. We can feel good enough in ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's an emotional learned response. So,
Yeah.
we can then clear that. Equally, some physical issues are created by some traumatic experience you've had, such as a car accident, etc. And what you can do another way is, all right, what was happening in your life when this problem began? All right, I had an accident. All
Yeah.
right, you still remember that? Yeah,
Yeah.
a good one. Yeah.
I had one girl who said the same, and she said, I said to her, so what was happening in your life then? And she goes, oh no, well, I did have a car accident that year, but I'm okay with that. I parked that, she said. And I said to her, okay, well, let's just go to that car accident. Can you just get into that
Yeah.
car accident? Let me tell the story of the car. Do you want to go there? She did. She goes, yeah, but I'm okay. No, I know I've parked that. And I said, oh, but I'd like to just go there. And the minute that we went there and we went inside the car, and she said, I saw my little baby's face and I think they were upside down.
Yeah.
Then came the tears. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, you parked that one then, did you? I was like,
Yeah.
because intuitively I work as well. So I always feel like intuitively my guys say, no, go, open the box. And they don't know why, but they sometimes, again, it's the whole thing of, your mind, your conscious mind is like, don't do it, don't go there, don't, because it's the fight or flight mechanism. It doesn't want you to go there to keep you safe.
Yeah, and also because you see, people don't understand what needs to be changed for them to release something like this. I've had many people say, well, I've dealt with that. It doesn't really come into my mind. Well, you might think you've dealt with that, but what you're looking at is if it wasn't a big emotional event, it's about survival. And your mind can still be tuning into that because the memory is not processed out. So if you still remember the event, there's a reason for it. Yeah.
Mm.
And sometimes we don't remember the highly traumatic event. So even if you don't remember it, doesn't mean to say it's not affecting you big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was I thinking? I was thinking of someone. Yeah. No. Yeah.
It's like it's also like what I try to explain to people as well.
Mm.
Sometimes things happen to us in our life that is whatever it's traumatic or experiences that we learn from. So I say to them, remember the experience of what it is that what was there to teach you, because everything comes into your life to teach you something. You've given yourself all of these experiences to teach you in this life how like my life. I say all the traumas and stuff that I had growing up as a child has helped me as a therapist for all of the people that are going to come in through my door, because whether it's the alcoholic parent, whether it's the abuse, all of those things, I now have that because I walked those shoes and I've had the experience, but I let the emotion go. The emotion
Yeah.
is what the
Yeah.
part of it that holds you to the experience.
Yeah, because we can learn from our experience in a really, really, really good way.
Yeah.
And that can be supportive of us living the quality life we want to live. Whereas if we've still got the disempowering emotions from the original event, it can drag us down and take the quality of our life away. And this is what this is. It's about, I suppose, these techniques empower people
Yeah.
no matter what you've had or experienced in life, you can come out of this empowered. That's what we're looking at here, because you can totally 100% turn it around, as you have there, Hazel. You're
Yeah.
saying about these experiences you've had that you've learned. You're now working with other people
Yeah.
to help them.
Yeah,
To
it's like your Iranian client who's the same. She had her experiences as a child, but now
yeah,
is using that to help others because she comes from it from a point of view of resonance and understanding, because she's walked those shoes, even though she may not have remembered it because it might have happened to her as a small child. But say, for instance, if we have, somebody who comes to us and is a client who doesn't really know what's going on, gets visions every now and then, gets it, sometimes they get this like a quick memory, and it's just like trying to make them open the box. So I get people who come in and go, oh, keep dreaming of this thing, of getting a punch in the face, or say, for instance, it's something like that is quite traumatic for them. And you use the movie scene. Can you explain about the movie technique? So for
well,
somebody who doesn't want to divulge into all of the information, they don't want to, give you all of that information as a therapist. They don't want to go down that road. So to explain the movie technique, because that's one of my favorites. I love that one.
yeah, I mean, there are many ways of working with an issue. And if you've got a fragmented memory, you can actually use EFT to bring the whole memory up. Yeah, that's one way of working with something like that, because sometimes we only have bits and pieces of memories. Yeah. And that's nothing unusual about that. It's just how it is. Yeah. But with movie technique, it might be that we remember the event. And if we were, when we start talking about events, many people will go straight back into it. as if they're still in the event. So they literally can relive the event very easily as they begin to talk about it. And that can be highly traumatic. It can be traumatizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a beautiful technique called the movie technique, whereby you don't have to go into it.
Mm.
Yeah. It can be a movie. Yeah. And it's got kind of a soundtrack, it's got visuals, etc. And it's almost like you can see yourself in it. So you're
Yeah.
dissociated out of it, creating a natural dissociation out of the event itself. Now, dissociation is a natural phenomenon, but here with this technique, we're creating a natural dissociation. So rather than you getting back in that event,
and feeling it,
see the
you
movie.
know, the senses of feeling it. You know, some people feel like when they've been traumatized as a child, and when they go back into that event, they go, oh, the terror comes up through them because they sense all of those, and they don't want to go there because they don't want to relive it.
Yeah, and I've used the movie technique a lot, and the beauty is you don't necessarily need to talk about what's happened, because sometimes you don't want that to happen with a client, because they could fast as grease lightning get back into that event and have quite an uncomfortable experience, and you might be keeping them as safe as possible during their session with you. You're looking to keep them in what we call the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is an emotional window in which they still feel that they're okay. Yeah, because they're with you, they're feeling safe with you as a therapist who's guiding them, so they can handle this level of discomfort. But then what you don't want is that they go ballistic.
Yeah.
Although we can handle that as well with EFT, because we can utilize anything. So if, for example, they did go into a big emotion with that, you see, the thing
You
with
can jump
EFT
the
is,
techniques.
yeah, we tune in and tap. If you have a big emotion, are you tuned in? Unless you dissociate. Well, generally, you're tuned in if you have a big emotion. So generally, if we keep tapping through the big emotion, it will bring balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And therapists who are familiar with having people who, if you work as a therapist long enough, you will have a certain number of clients who will go into big emotions, because we cannot guarantee everyone will stay in this little kind of gentle safe zone, so, because of the nature of issues. Yeah. But what we're looking at, if that happens, we can utilize and use the opportunity to tap down and bring them back into balance.
Yeah.
When that happens, we often have amazing things happen for the client, because they will have cleared whatever was connected to that energy that came up. So if I go back, I think you want to say something. So
yeah, it's like the different stages, you know, like the different stages of the event. So say, for instance, they get a punch off their parent, right? And they have that's where you stop with them, and you tap on the punch. Even though I had this punch in the kitchen, I accept that it happened. And the words that you use, those phrases that you use, are allowing you to recognize that it happened. So that's in your phrasing that you use when you're karate chop point. The punch in the kitchen, I accept that it happened, but I totally and completely love and approve of myself. And the reason that you say the totally and completely love and approve of myself, or I love myself, is you're affirming. The affirmation is very powerful in this technique, because the affirmations really help you tell yourselves that it's okay.
Well, yeah, because what you're looking at there is, so you have a dissociative title in a way, the punch in the kitchen event, whatever here, or you can give a title to that. And if the person struggles to give a title to an event, of course, they can always give a color to that. Yeah. So even though, and they give the title movie problem, that's how you set that up. And I tend to not always use I love and approve of myself with people, although that's a very powerful one. With a specific event, one of my preferred type of back end affirmations is I accept that happened, which is what you said, accepting it. Because if we resist the fact it happened, which some people do, they say I've never accepted that happens. It keeps it running in their system, so they keep getting the negative of that. It keeps badly affecting them. But the moment we think, all right, don't like it, however, I accept that event did happen, I accept it happened. Yeah. Your system stops resisting letting it go. Yeah. So even just that mere acceptance of it was rotten and horrible, I accept that it happened.
Because as we said, I mean, those experiences happen to you because you've, on a spiritual sense, have chosen to have that experience happen, to allow it to play out in your life, because it was going to teach you to be able to stand up if somebody did punch you again, that it was never going to happen again, because you've had the experience of it. So each experience that's happened to you in your life is happening to you because and I know that's very hard to understand when somebody's going through an experience of cancer or having a child that's dying. They go, why would I choose that? But when you look at it from a spiritual perspective and you look at it, what the reason for your coming here is, it's all like life school. It's the experience that we're coming here to learn. It's the experience that we have that's going to teach us to help other people going forward, like the jobs that we're doing. And it's such a powerful, like with this technique, with emotional freedom technique, I think it's so more powerful because it's something that they can do themselves. It's such a simple tool to use to empowers them to heal themselves. Because I think, especially as a therapist, you find that you might have also clients who come back over and over again because they want you to fix them. And that's where it's good to give them these techniques that they can fix themselves and go home whenever they feel like something is starting to arise and there's an anxiety. They can tap it out before it gets to the point where they're going to throw a frying pan or throw something, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a saying, and it's not really coming to my tongue at the moment, but it was like, I think they said originally, give a man food and they'll feed them for one day.
Yeah, give a
them the
woman knowledge.
tools.
Or give a
Yeah,
woman knowledge and she'll teach the world, or something like that, isn't it? It's
good one. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because
And that's what you're looking at here, the knowledge, the ability to um, do it yourself. So power at your own fingertips, basically.
yeah,
And in a way that's in alignment with how our mind and body function. So very, very natural thing. You're supporting the body's natural healing mechanisms.
yeah.
That's what we're doing when we use these energy therapy techniques. You're just supporting a natural healing mechanism.
And it's something that has been here for thousands of years. They've used it for thousands of years. They've used it in China, they use it in the East. And it's like something now that's, excuse me, is people are using more of those natural forms of energy and the modalities of energy healing, because they realize it's actually starting on a energy level for us. It's the emotion force before it physically comes and manifests itself on the body. People think, oh, I have a pain in my wrist, or whatever, joint pain, and they think, oh, it's a physical pain, and they don't connect it to an actual emotion or something that's happened before. They just
Well,
think,
just to put that into a perspective. So if you have an injury, as in you have an accident, fall over, yeah, you could have created damage, and therefore, if you have pain as a consequence of that, that's an important signal you need to have to stop you creating further damage. So
yeah,
pain serves a purpose. However, once you have something that's chronic, yeah, and medical services don't get great results with chronic pain problems. The reason for that is because they're emotional. Yeah.
yeah.
And I will give you a story to highlight that. And you like this one. I mean,
Mhm.
this wasn't a particularly chronic one because it was only a couple of weeks. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily get into your big chronic range. Yeah. But it's a good story that does highlight that. This particular story is about one of my trainees who came on one of the mentoring days that I run for my students. And this was when people could actually meet together in a room. You remember
Yeah,
that,
I remember
Hazel?
that. Yeah, I know. It's only like 12 months ago. It feels so long.
Yeah. She came and she was in a lot of pain. And she had to push through that pain to come on that day because she'd actually fallen out of a house, down a step, and hit her arm and chipped off the end of the bone. So
Right.
basically a broken bone.
Yeah.
And I think that's called a radial something, I don't know the full term, a radial fracture or something like
Mhm.
that. Now, that's a type of injury where they don't immobilize it. It isn't about
Yeah.
putting it in this thing and letting it repair or anything like that. But initially they put her in a sling, and then the doctor taken it off and said, no, you got to move with that one. And you might have already lost part of your range of movement. And she'd been to physio, and the physio would say, you got to push through that pain. So she was pushing through that pain, determined to get movement back in. But then she came on the mentoring. And, she said about being in the pain, and it was very difficult for her to be there. And I said, well, is it okay if I do a bit of work with you? And she said, yeah. And I said, all right, what happened? She said, well, I fell out of the house down the step, and it was like that.
Yeah.
Well, you see, that's trauma, isn't it? Yeah. So I actually tapped on. So even though it was so shocking, yeah,
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
fell out of the house, and just on the shock emotion, massive shift. Yeah.
Mhm.
And she immediately was able to do this movement back. And I can't remember now if we did one or two more rounds, very short indeed, on the trauma of the accident. And then she's going, choo, choo, choo.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
And
fixed. I'm fixed.
yeah. And by the way, I did check because I had another student on that mentoring day. He was a paramedic. I said, is it okay for her to move that arm?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, yes, it is. She should be moving it.
Yeah.
And so I got my second opinion before because you're always looking at safety when you're doing these things, doing something that's going to be safe to do. She got full range back. And she was laughing about that. In fact, she went back to the doctors a short time later, and the physio met the physio. The physio said, oh, brilliant, brilliant. Oh, can I do a case history on you to show how working doing physio improves a problem?
Yeah, but it just goes to show you that's how sometimes as well, because sometimes the doctors are very, logical in their way of thinking, and then they see something that they couldn't fix with medicine and the pharmaceutical way, and they say, okay, yeah, well, you go on, do whatever you're doing, keep doing, like, people who come to me, I never say to people, oh, don't take your medicine. It works in conjunction with it. So Reiki and all of those forms of energy therapies, other modalities like even reflexology and those, they're working on the energy body, so they can be done as well as.
They
And
can be.
when the doctor sees the experience of her actually healing herself, and that she's now going down a road where she said, oh my God, this works, that might change her life experience and her journey, but it also changes him. So there's a ripple effect that goes out from one healing experience from her.
Yeah, I think though, once you've got certain beliefs, it depends on the beliefs of doctors. Sometimes, beliefs
Yeah.
give you filters over your eyes, and
Yeah.
sometimes the information can't get through those filters because your existing belief structure doesn't allow that. What I would say is, just to go back to her story, what you have is when you have a trauma like that, because she's falling, it's like mortal danger, isn't it? And we
Yeah.
have the fight, flight, or freeze response or faint response. You have them. And her system will choose which is the most appropriate to enable her to survive that situation.
Yeah.
I've fallen over. I fell over a metal bar. And I remember as I was floating
Through
down
the
to the
air.
ground, it was totally psychedelic. It was imagine this. I am about to hit the floor and break my nose. It was like a total psychedelic experience because your body's pumping all chemicals into you.
Yeah.
To enable you to survive that response, to survive that trauma that would have happened to her. But the thing is, as you're falling, you might have a kind of immobilized energy because there could be initial fear as you begin that, and that gets you go into shutdown mode. So your body's there thinking that's the only way I'm surviving this. So let's really optimize my survival. So our body worked perfectly well, but the excess energy can get trapped.
Because again, that could have been something for her that maybe as a child she had a big fall and there's a trigger there that she knew that, oh my God, I'm going to hurt myself again. What happened to me when I was 1 year old and I fell off my bike, and they do this thing like they go rigid and they actually break more bones, where they say even as a baby, when a baby falls over, they're so floppy that they don't actually break bones because they have that flap, because they don't understand the experience of falling, and they don't have those fears yet. So it's like sometimes it actually can be because of the trigger there that something has happened to them before. And I always say that if I fell over the year actually wasn't the year that we did it, fell over the December before we did that course. And I always say, if you fall over, that's your guides putting their foot out in front of you and saying, take a break.
Yeah, well, I think you're very, very, very hard worker there.
Yeah. I was like, okay, my guides are giving me Christmas off.
Yeah.
So going forward, for people out there who are interested in EFT or interested in what we're talking about, whether it's EFT, I think is an easy technique to start them off with. Where do they find you? So your website, you have all online courses at the moment. So
yeah, well, I mean, the courses are live courses on the Zoom platform. So although they're online and I have certain backup information online, the actual courses are run live. So I can interact with the students, so we can do loads of practical sessions, loads of hands-on stuff, so they truly do learn. They can find me at my website, which is www.tania, Tania, and another A, Prince, PRINCE.com, to TaniaAPrince.com. Well, I think people can see my name there. It's that.
Well, it's Tania A
.com
Prince.
at the end.
Yeah, because I know I always say Tania Prince, and then they go, no, I can't find her, and I keep forgetting to put the A in.
Well, it's worthwhile to put the A because I have a niece who's also called Tania Prince, and she does love the language a little bit.
Right.
That's not me. That's not me.
The language is in the bad language, or the language is in good language?
She's expressive.
Oh, she's expressive.
Lovely and expressive.
Yeah, but it's only language, because I do course a lot. My auntie used to say to me, "Hey, you don't course like that on your course." I'm like, really, I'm not actually saying it with intention behind it. I'm just language to me. So.
Well, you look at different cultures as well, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
different cultures, different things.
Yeah, Irish say feck a lot.
Yeah. Different cultures, different things. It's just part of the way, isn't it? You know, and if you don't use that way, you stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
You know,
but
it's part of, you know.
So if somebody is coming to do your course, what would you recommend them to do first? Just do the first level of it, what we did, just to practice the one day, just to get them into it?
No, because we didn't so much do the one day. What we're looking at is, I would say, the 3 days, if you really want to get into it, because immersion is important. Because, you know, what we have is people have existing belief structures, and in some ways, as a trainer, I've got to break through them existing belief structures, because you might believe but not believe. You know, it depends on what we've been taught through school, through the TV, whatever. Because then we form beliefs and it stops information getting in. So we want to be getting right through that, so that we give you enough convincers that you come out of the training and think, yeah.
And also, I think that on the day one, I think that when we did day 2 and day 3, that you got so many more techniques.
Yes.
So you had a problem where you couldn't chase the pain out, that you had other techniques to go to, and it meant that you had a massive toolbox of all of those different techniques, which really do work. But look at Tania, I know that we kept you for longer than we were supposed to keep you today, but look, thank you so much, because I really feel in this series that I need to connect in with people on different levels, and I felt that you were the best one for the emotional level of the body. And I think that because the way we work, well, especially our beliefs and the conditions that we think that it's a physical problem for us, when it actually is an energy that starts with emotion for us. So that's why we were doing it from this level. But thank you for all of your gorgeous information. I love you as a teacher, because you have this beautiful bubbly energy and you teach it really well, and you have all ways of teaching it. So you can do it in a visual way, you can do it in telling stories and that, and you're a really great teacher. And for people out there who are interested in doing emotional freedom technique, this technique we talked about, or the other ones, which is mindfulness-based repatterning, that's the one I want to do.
Mindfulness-based inner repatterning,
Mindfulness-based inner repatterning.
Yeah.
And that's your own technique that you came up with.
Yeah, it's a very simple approach, but gets really powerful results. I think did the conference at the weekend and did this mini demonstration, and people were like, oh, what the problem's got? They could not believe it. But it's just supporting the body's natural healing. Very powerful approach.
Yeah. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.
You have a lovely day.
Lovely day.
Thank you.